everyone, and thank you for joining us today, and welcome to today's webinar, which is Conversations with Senior Management from our Build Your Career webinar series. My name is Scott Levine, and I'm the membership manager here at the IEEE Computer Society. Each month, we host a webinar on vital business skills that will help you exceed at your current job and be helpful throughout your career. Before I get started, I would just like to go over some housekeeping items. You can enter your questions in the Q&A box you see on your screen. Tomorrow, you will receive an email, which will include a set of summary slides as well as the recording from today's presentation. Please, when you do type in a question, if you can, please reference the slide your question refers to. Join us. Roger Granis has dedicated his career to helping engineers advance within the industry. This includes various webinars that covers public speaking and presentation skills. Access these resources and more with the IEEE Computer Society. It is the Society's mission to provide the tools computing professionals need in order to reach their highest level of success. This includes access to technical communities and local chapters, conferences, and more. Additionally, our jobs board features numerous open positions within the USA and insights that can help get you closer to your dream role. Lastly, discover up-to-date career advice from computing experts by visiting our Tech News blog. More information will be shared with you after the webinar, and you can always learn more at computer.org. Circling back to today's topic, conversations with senior management. These conversations tend to have their own challenges. Durations could be limited. Senior management, they don't always have the in-depth knowledge or technical details. As Roger will say, they proverbial don't know 9/10 of the iceberg. After today's webinar, you'll learn 7 ways to boost your confidence in these situations, including link your solutions and talking points to business and organizational priorities, describe complex concepts in accessible language, synthesize details for easy comprehension, identify when to summarize and when to go deep, and a few more. As mentioned, joining us today is Roger Granis of the Granis Group, which he formed in 2005. Prior to that, he spent 17 years at Gartner, where he built the Gartner Sales University, which helped grow revenue from 22 million to 850 million. He also helped the launch of Gartner's popular podcast talking technology. Roger holds a bachelor's in speech and psychology from Willamette University and did postgraduate studies in theater and creative writing at San Francisco State University. Roger also has a personal connection to IEEE, but I'll let him tell that story, which I believe will come up in this first few slides. Roger, thank you for being with us here today, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Scott, and let's give a round of applause to Scott and team. He and his colleagues work very hard to bring good content. He wants to make sure whatever I do is on target and here to help you. So I've worked hard to bring you another program, and I thank you, Scott, for the relationship we've had over the last, I think, 3 years now. Anyway, welcome to Conversations with Senior Management. As Scott mentioned, we're part of the same family. I started out after my theater career and decided I need to start making money. My first job was working for Adam Osborne in Berkeley, California, the inventor of the first portable computer, and that was in the early 80s. And as you'll see later, that he had a certain personality type and a certain communication style as a senior leader. And we'll talk about the different styles and how to flex your approach to each one. I actually worked for his publishing company. He had Osborne computers, Osborne books that he sold to McGraw-Hill, and then used the proceeds of that to launch his computer company. I then moved to the East Coast near New York City in Connecticut, and spent, as Scott mentioned, 17 years at Gartner. So the common thread is technology, but it's helping technical professionals like you to communicate better, whether you're talking with your peers, presenting in front of a group, or in today's case, talking to senior management. I've just published a book. It's available on Amazon called The Yellow Cake Principle, Your Recipe for Influence and Success. If you do decide to buy it, you have to, because it's brand new, just type in the title, but over on the left, scroll down and select books category. Anyway, I'm not here to sell the book, but it's a good summary of many of the things we will be talking about. So that's Roger, and I'll tell you about my father in a little bit. I'd like to know who you are. Where are you in your career? So this is a poll. If you could please check, check the box, check the circle. Who are you? As the Who said. The band, the Who band. Who are you? Are you? Please type in. Right, good. 4% have responded. Student, PhD candidate, entry level. Are you a team lead, supervisor, manager? Are you a senior executive yourself up at the C-suite? Maybe you're retired or other. All right, we're going to give this a couple more seconds here. While you're doing that, I will tell you about my father briefly. He is a lifetime member of IEEE. Once a month, he would not be home for dinner because he was up in San Francisco with his colleagues at the IEEE meetings. And to tie it together, actually, Adam Osborne spoke at an IEEE meeting after I had started working for him. So he told the whole audience what a hard-working salesperson I was, and that made my dad very happy. All right, let's hear from one or two more of you, and then we will go. All right, we've heard from 70%. I think we will go to the survey says. All right, so 5%. Let's see, most of you, the big majority, are team leads, managers, and next down the list, retired, and some others, okay? And then a smattering across the range, students, PhD candidates, entry level. So we've got quite a range with a good chunk of you as managers yourselves. Bravo. All right, thank you. Let's go to the next question. This is our second and final polling question. Talking about what's your greatest challenge. This will help me get to know you and help me focus my content a little bit better today so that it resonates with you. What is your greatest challenge when speaking to senior management? And you can check one or two of those, if you would please. I get nervous. I know that was the case for me. I give too many details. Boy, I see that a lot. I have trouble simplifying complex concepts. I don't know what's important to them. I don't know what they think about. They don't give me enough time. They are too direct and blunt. Yes, Adam Osborne was very direct and blunt. If you got there late, he would just say, 2 minutes late, with a very angry face. So you didn't want to be late to his meetings. All right. One of the exciting things about working for him was I got to go to the West Coast Computer Fair. That was in 1981. The Apple II computer had just come out. Steve Jobs was there. There was the Homebrew Computer Society folks there, roller skating around, a lot of hippies and long-haired people. It was the early days of personal computing. I went from theater to there, so it was quite a switch, but very exciting. All right, let's see who you are. All right, love it. So 60%, I don't know what's important to them. Great, we've got great content on that. I get nervous. I give too many details. They don't give me enough time. Got 25%. They are too direct and blunt, 20%. All right, so the good news is the content we've created today is right on target for you. All right, let's get started. Here's our agenda. We are going to review some universal principles. So even if you've seen my programs before, the first two or three that I'm going to bring up are reinforcing what we've covered before. They are super important. I myself, as a speaker, trainer, consultant, constantly take classes, and I'm getting a new perspective on content that I've already taken classes with, but it helps sharpen our skills. So bravo for being here today. We'll talk about senior management, who they are as a people, and what's unique to them, how to understand what's on their minds, and how to link your content to those issues. And then we'll talk about specifically how to have that conversation, and certainly plenty of time for questions and answers. And please, if you have questions as we go, feel free to type them in the chat, and Scott will be monitoring that. All right, here we go with universal principles. As you've already heard, I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area. My parents actually walked across the Golden Gate Bridge on opening day in 1935. I mentioned my father is one of us. He is an electrical engineer and went to all the IEEE meetings. Now, he was a big proponent of family vacations. So we would go in the station wagon to many scenic sites in California every summer, my sister and I sitting in the back seat, fighting, of course. And now my dad had a camera with a giant telephoto lens, big lens. Now, if you were vacationing in San Francisco or California and you had a camera like that, what would you be taking pictures of? Probably giant redwood trees, maybe the Golden Gate Bridge, maybe the Pacific Ocean. Maybe you'd go up to Yosemite and take a picture of Half Dome. Well, my father, being an engineer and being an inventor of pole line hardware, these are gadgets that connected electricity from the power plant along the lines to our homes and offices. My dad would pull that car over, get out his camera, and take pictures of telephone poles. That's my dad. Yes, you see, he's just like us. He's a nerd. Those are his inventions up on the telephone pole. So that's what he took pictures of. So, okay, entertaining story, Roger, wonderful. What does this have to do with our conversation today? Well, it's super important because when we talk to other people and we're trying to influence them, trying to persuade, especially senior leaders who have short attention spans, they're looking at things from a high level, we need to see the world through their camera lens, not ours. We really have to walk that mile in their shoes, as they say. Now, that's easy in concept, but not easy in practice because we're nervous. We want to advance our own agendas. We don't know what they're thinking, but we really got to take time to see the world through their eyes. And that might mean doing some research before you have that conversation. It also might mean taking some pressure off you that maybe you've got 2 meetings with the senior leader so that you don't have to have all the answers in the first meeting. Maybe you have information gathering in the first meeting, take a break, come back for another meeting a day or 2 or a week later with your further thoughts. Let me tell you a quick story about the importance of seeing the world through the senior leader's eyes. Now, early in my career with Gartner, when I started this sales training academy, I got to go around the world to some great locations. And one of those locations was Monte Carlo. We flew into Nice in southern France, got to fly in helicopters over to Monte Carlo to avoid the windy roads. And I was in charge of setting up a meeting with the country managers of Europe. So we had the Netherlands, England, France, Germany, Spain, all gathering in one room. And my boss, who was the head of worldwide sales, said, before the people came down, because I had gotten a sneak peek of the leaders and he was on his way down, he said, what are people wearing? Are they wearing coats and ties? And me, being a young, naive Californian, said, hey, man, it doesn't matter. Just be you. Okay, not the thing to say to your boss who wants to look good. So he came in without a tie and then stepped out of the room. Everyone else had ties on. And he said, Roger, next time you need to be accurate. So he went out back to his room, put on a tie. So in that moment, I realized I wasn't the important one here. He was. My job was to anticipate what is important to him, and to him, image was super important. And I believe that's true of most of the senior leaders I've come across. Even the casual dressers like Steve Jobs, who I ran into a couple times at these conferences, his image was casual, but it was important to him. So a couple of key takeaways. Our job is to help the senior leaders look good, not get embarrassed. Okay? They're image conscious. They don't want to get embarrassed. All right. All right. Number two of the refreshing of these fundamentals is we want to speak their language. So let's just do a quick review of the 4 communication styles. So I'm going to ask you to guess which of the following people have matching communication styles. And I hope with our global audience, these folks are recognizable. And I apologize if they are not. I'll give a brief description. So over on the left, we have an English person, Simon Cowell. He has been the host of Britain's Got Talent, America's Got Talent. He's got a certain communication style. Now, we're not looking at his career, his gender, how he's dressed, simply how does he communicate with the world? Who over on the right has the style most like him? Is it Barack Obama? Mr. Rogers. Now, Mr. Rogers was a kind, a gentle host of a television program for young children. And then over on the right, we have Hillary Clinton, who ran for president of the United States. So who's got the style most like Simon Cowell? It is Hillary Clinton. So pay attention. If you're working for Simon Cowell or Hillary Clinton, we want to change our communication style to match theirs. They are very direct and to the point and blunt. And we'll talk more about different styles in a minute. Okay, over on the left, we have Mr. Rogers. Again, for those of you who don't know him, a kind, gentle, soft-spoken, very nurturing television host for a children's program. So over on the right, we have Mother Teresa, Robin Williams, and Oprah Winfrey. So who's got the style most like Mr. Rogers? It's Mother Teresa. So what do we notice the difference? We just saw Simon Cowell. He is loud, direct, and blunt. These folks are the complete opposite. Soft-spoken, gentle, nurturing, very people-focused. All right, let's go to number 3 of 4. We've got President Barack Obama. Over on the right, Robin Williams, Hillary Clinton, and Bill Gates. Now, for those of you who know Barack Obama, seen him on interviews and giving speeches, he's got 2 distinct styles. When he's giving a big, inspiring speech, like in Chicago, his style is more like Robin Williams. But if you watch him carefully at a TV interview, his style is more like Bill Gates. It's very thoughtful, very deliberate. He goes into detail. Notice the cadence has slowed down. It's not Hillary Clinton. It's not Mr. Rogers. It's slow pace like Mr. Rogers, but Barack and Bill Gates are focused on the minutia, the details, the processes, more engineering-like. Now, engineers come in all styles. A lot of engineers are like Bill Gates because very studious, very focused on details. So again, the point is we want to be conscious of the type of style the senior leader we're interacting with and match their communication style. And then finally, we've got Robin Williams, who's a little more wild, a little more energetic. He's very people-focused, non-linear, all over the map, as we say, jumping from topic to topic. Who is most like that? It is Oprah Winfrey. And now she's, again, for those of you outside the States who may not know, Oprah, she is an energizing television host and producer as well. Okay, the idea, if you want to communicate well with whether it's your senior manager, your employees, or somebody at your house, learn their style and communicate in their style. You want to be a chameleon. Now, you're not going to do tricks and be manipulative. It's simply speaking their language. How do you determine their language? Well, do they talk fast or slow? So try to match their rate of speed. Are they focused more on people? Do they want that chit chat at the beginning? How is the family? Or are they focused more on the task? Okay. And here are 4 styles. They spell the word sold because ultimately, whether we like the word sales or not, we're all in sales. We're trying to influence other people. So here are the 4 styles. We've got steadfast. They are direct, strong-willed, and firm. The outgoing folks are optimistic, lively, enthusiastic. The loving people, even-tempered, very accommodating. And then over on the right, the detail-oriented folks, like Barack Obama, like a lot of engineers, analytical, reserved, and precise. The key here is to deliver content in their preferred way. So Hillary Clinton, just give them the bullet points and the bottom line. The outgoing folks, fun, possibilities. The loving folks, you want to slow down, get a little bit quiet. They don't want people's feelings to get hurt. So if you're trying to influence a senior leader, talk about how this idea you have is going to help bring the team together, how it's going to create harmony out there in the organization and for our clients. The detail-oriented folks, you need to provide lots and lots of details. A senior leader is going to be skeptical if you come in and say, hey, it's going to be wonderful, trust me. No, they need to see all the details. Here's an example of how describing a simple restaurant would change depending on who you're talking to. A steadfast person, again, they want bullet points. Hey, great food, great service. That's it. That's all they need to know. Don't bore them with details. The outgoing folks, you want to talk about how fun it's going to be. Hey, this place rocks. The food is to die for, which means it's delicious. The wait staff is straight fire. That's a millennial term meaning really good. The loving folks, again, they want to hear about peace and harmony. It's a place where we can come together and connect. And finally, the detailed-oriented folks want lots of details. They want the Yelp ratings. They want to know what's on the menu. How far is it from the hotel? Is parking free? Is the wait staff vaccinated? Lots of details. See, same restaurant, described 4 different ways. What we want to do is identify who we are, because one of the dangers is, and another key takeaway is, you want to learn how to communicate to your opposite style, because they talk at a different rate. They care about either people or tasks the opposite of you. So that diagonal corner is your danger zone. What you want to do is pay close attention to that blind spot and provide the information in that opposite style, which is hard to do because it does not come naturally. Ultimately, we want to strengthen our flexibility, really watch the other person, the senior leader, and map to their style. All right, let's look at some general attributes of CEOs. By the way, let's start off with this. When I say CEOs, I mean senior leaders. And here are some CEOs I've worked for. So they come in all communication styles. You would think that all leaders would be direct and to the point. And at times they are because they're short on time. But in fact, CEOs, senior leaders, come in all styles. So Adam Osborne was direct and to the point. Gideon Gartner, the founder of Gartner, was very detail-oriented. He was brilliant. And even though he was detail-oriented, he kept things really interesting. But it was backed up by facts, data, his own insights. His successor at Gartner, the next CEO at Gartner, was Manny Fernandez. He was lively, energetic, fun. He would have game shows at all the company meetings. And he was terrific for Gartner in that Gartner, the company, at that high growth period. Let me go back here. The next CEO at Gartner was back to the beginning. I'm blanking on his name. He came after I left, but he was very detail oriented. He came from McKinsey. Jimmy Fallon, one of the hosts of a late night television show. I've not worked for him, but he is a leader of that show, and he is that loving style, very people focused, all about relationships. He's soft spoken, especially compared to the other comedians on late night television. So again, what is your communication style? What is your blind spot? And what is the language of a leader that you'd like to have a conversation with? So start thinking about that so that you can apply this to a real world scenario. All right, another quick recap that when you communicate with senior leaders, just as with other people, 3 distinct things need to happen. Number 1, you've got to make a connection. And with a senior leader, that can be really fast. Number 2, you want them to know that you understand them and their issues. So either you've done some homework and can let them know through your content that you understand what their issues and challenges are, or you ask them if it's okay to ask a couple of questions. And then ultimately, if your goal is to present something, a new product idea, a change in a configuration, bringing in some new hardware or software, you're going to present your idea. So what the biggest mistake people make is they just come in and present. So we have no knowledge of, we're not linking it to what's important to that senior leader. We haven't made a connection. So those 3 things need to happen. Now, in real life, you zig and zag back and forth a little bit, especially between asking questions and presenting. But the key, and one of the things we forget a lot, is we want to make a connection. We want to establish that initial rapport where we both parties relax into a conversation where we're now focused on what the topic at hand is. All right, so that was a quick review. Again, speak their language, flex your communication style, and do those 3 things: connect, understand, and present. All right, let's study the people called senior managers. What have I learned over my years? What have I read? What have I studied? What have I observed? Number 1, they are really busy. Don't have a lot of time. They don't want to get sucked into hallway chit-chat that's off topic. They're going to their next meeting. Number 1, they're thinking at a high level. They're strategic in nature. So they may not be involved. In fact, if they're good leaders, they're not involved in the day-to-day details. They rely on other people to do that well for them. So as a good leader, they're managing others. They're not micromanaging. They're giving guidance, but they're not making all those little decisions. So they're managing through other people. So that's key. So if we go to them, the most senior person, expect them to make a decision, they might delegate you to somebody else. That's not a bad thing, because when you get that leader's permission to go talk to somebody else who may be reluctant, you can say, Julie or Bob asked me to contact you about this topic. Let's schedule a half an hour to talk about it. So because the boss said, I'm referred in, that other person will be more likely to say, oh, I guess I'd better meet with you because the boss said to. Next, they manage by objectives. So they've got certain business goals, certain organizational goals that they want to achieve during, I'm going to say, the calendar year, the fiscal year. So the key here is for 2 things. 1, know what those issues are so that you can be conversant in them. And then secondly, whatever it is you want to talk about, especially if you're proposing a new solution, you can connect the dots. You can show them how that new solution helps them achieve their corporate goal, their organizational goal for the year. So speak their language, use their words in terms of, not just flexing your style, but speaking about that objective that's important to them, and then showing how your proposal links to that, helps them achieve that goal. And then one other thing in general about senior management is they have an executive presence. The good ones do. Now, I've done a lot of work for companies like GE, General Electric. Those executives there go to deep immersion school. It's called the Crotonville University, Crotonville University. It's an off-site location. And they go there for leadership grooming school. It's like a 3-week program. They live there for 3 weeks. They learn how to speak, how to dress, how to use leadership language, so that they develop that executive presence. So what is that? Well, I think they speak a little more calmly, a little more confidently. They exude a presence and a confidence. A friend of mine who was the CEO of a very well-known computer company, the first time I met him, I didn't know who he was. I met him through Boy Scouts. My son was thinking of joining Boy Scouts here in the town where I live, and we went to one of the troops first, and this gentleman named Steve came out, and he just had this aura. And he sat down with my son, who was 11 years old, and just pulled him in. He asked him, what do you like to do, Ben? Do you like hiking? Do you like swimming? So he was engaging. He was making a connection with my son. But he had this executive presence. He stood a little bit different. Now, it wasn't fake. It wasn't arrogant. But it was just a grounded presence. So what does this mean to you? Well, A, you want to match the style of the other person. In addition to that, you want to maybe calm down, be grounded, and be present. And it's body language, it's word choice. I think it's speaking at a slower, more deliberate rate. Again, depending on the style of the person you want to influence. So they're busy, they're thinking at a high level. They don't want you coming in with the minutia, the details right at the beginning. They manage through others. They've got key objectives that they have to achieve, or they're out, or they don't get their bonus, or the board votes them out. And they have an executive presence. I think it's important to be aware of the top issues that are out there in leadership land. In addition to the corporate or organizational objectives, you want to be aware and be able to maybe have a high-level conversation, or at least bring it up, show them you're aware of the greater global issues that are on their minds and are weighing on them. Now, in our world of computing, a CIO may not have these issues on his or her mind, but you want to find out what they are so that they see you as a competent peer, not a low-level person who's just dealing with bits and bytes and down in the weeds, as we say here in the States, meaning buried in the day-to-day details. So some of the issues, and you can do a Google search, according to this source, Compro, COVID disruption is one of the top ones. Inflation, I don't know about you, but my groceries are getting really expensive. So imagine how that impacts a CEO or a leader. My people are getting paid the same, but they're spending 30% more on groceries. They're going to be coming to me and saying, hey, I can't live on this wage. So they're going to be thinking about that. Labor shortages, especially after COVID, getting people back to work. I had to go to a hospital procedure a couple weeks ago. When I got there, I said to all of them, thank you for working. There's a nurse shortage where I live. Supply chain shortages, again, you probably impacted that. As a consumer, I am as a homeowner, I couldn't get new fencing because they couldn't get the wood down from Canada. And then changes in consumer behavior. So again, when talking to senior leaders, the idea is to elevate your conversation so that they see you as a peer. So you've got some knowledge and awareness and sensitivity to the issues that are weighing on them. All right, let's see an example here. So we're talking to, let's call her Mindy over there on the left. Now, her objectives for this year as the head of this division are to grow market share 20%, increase profits 8 million, and expand in Europe. Okay, so that's what we know about Mindy. And what we want to do is connect our conversation to those issues. That's an example. Here are some other general tips when conversing with senior executives. We don't want to just show up with problems. We want to identify some solutions. So, hey, boss, here are some issues that we're having with our server farm. Here are a couple of options we've thought about. And you're going to present that in a different way depending on their communication style. And you want to give executive summaries. Again, high level, bottom line, net. You want to be prepared for questions, because in my observations and studies over the years, though the CEO, the leader, may not want to hear a lot of details at the beginning, if they latch onto the idea, they might and very likely will go into some detailed drill down, detailed questions. You want to be prepared. Always, as I mentioned earlier, I've learned over the years, our job is to make them look good. Now, we're not going to do anything funny or illegal, but we want to support them by developing programs and executing on our projects that help achieve their goals and make them look good. One of the sales trainers we hired at Gartner said, any employee's job is to make their boss successful. Now, a good boss's goal is to help their employees be successful, so it's a symbiotic, harmonious relationship. And as I said earlier, elevate your presence. You also, in addition to speaking the language, you want to use their words. Here's an example of somebody not using the words of the leader. So as I mentioned, and Scott mentioned, I ran sales training at Gartner. And once a year, we would put on the annual Gartner sales mid-year motivational meetings, so 3 days of learning and motivation. And so my boss said, hey, why don't you, Roger, why don't you bring in somebody from learning and development, L&D, and see if they've got any creative ideas that we might incorporate into our sales event this year. I said, great, bring them in. So we brought in a person, and immediately that person started asking questions. Not bad, that's a good thing, but used their language by asking questions like, what are your learning objectives? How many participants will there be at the meeting? What kind of results do you want to get using the Kirkpatrick Level 4 evaluation scale? Would you like a job aid at the meeting? Do you want to do any asynchronous training before the event? Okay, now the boss and everyone in the room after that person left went, what planet were they from? That person's language wasn't bad, it was just their world, not the leaders of the sales team's world. Now, if she had used words like, hey, what are your goals for the meeting? How many salespeople will be there? Are there any specific results you'd like to get? Would some sort of a cheat sheet or study guide be helpful? Do you want them to do any pre-work? Oh, great. Yeah. So the conversation would have gone a lot better. So you want to use the language of the person, of the leader that you're talking to. All right, let's take all this and put it to work in some conversations. All right, I mentioned that in any conversation, to be successful, you need to make that connection, establish that rapport initially. Get in sync with them. So you've got to sometimes have a little small talk, a little chit chat, or at least mention the topic, because the people you're calling on that you're meeting with are thinking about the prior meeting, and it's going to take them a few seconds to get onto this topic. You want to understand and then present your idea. So connecting, as I mentioned, they're not thinking about you when you walk in the door. Even if it's a scheduled meeting and they say we've got a half an hour, you want to do something to bridge the gap between what they're thinking about and you. My numbers are this. You've got 3 seconds to get their attention, another 10 seconds to hold their attention, which buys you another 30 seconds, and then you're in business. Then you're in rapport. I did some research a few years ago with the top sales producers at a global Fortune 50 financial services company. I said, how do you get meetings with people you've never met before? And they said, we do 2 things. We find something in common and bring something of value. So one of the ways to establish that connection and even get their interest to meet with you in the first place is to mention something in common, like a common goal. You could mention an event that you went, the company picnic. Maybe you both went to the same school or root for the same sports team. Just something in common. Research shows that when you have something in common with somebody, they feel that connection. And maybe you offer something of value. Okay? I'm going to, this is on prior webinars. I'm going to skip over that just to save us a little bit of time. But some other ways to make that connection is mentioning their name, paying a sincere compliment, not flattery, not something that you don't genuinely feel, but paying a compliment. Maybe they had a success the last quarter. Maybe their implementation went well, whatever it is. Mention something in common. You could drop a name. In that example I gave earlier where I said, hey, Bob asked me to meet with you. Oh, Bob is important. I need to meet with him. Maybe it's a friend you have in common or somebody from another department. You could state a problem and, as we said, bring something of value. Let's see how this plays out in an email. All right, so here's the person in the C-suite that we want to send an email to. We've done some research. We know that her top priorities are the ones listed there: grow market share 20%, increase profits 8 million, expand in Europe. She's from, in the U.S., a state called Iowa. That's in the middle of the United States. Cornfields, soybeans, very nice people there. And some human resource issues. We've got 8 open jobs. The turnover in that role is 48% and so forth. So let's see how we would use these principles of connecting to get a meeting with this CEO, Wendy. Okay, in the subject line, Iowa, idea to save $5 million. Then the body of the email. Hi, Wendy. Welcome to Massachusetts. That's a state in the U.S. In the Northeast, where Boston is. Wendy, I understand you grew up in Iowa. I went to the University of Iowa. I'd like to share some data around our high turnover rate and explore an idea that could save $5 million per year. May I schedule a 40-minute meeting with you? So to get a conversation with a senior manager, we might want to write an email, and here are some techniques to do that. Oh, I went backwards there. Sorry about that. Let me just reset here. There we go. All right, so let's see how this looks. So we mentioned 2 things, something in common. So I've mentioned Iowa twice and an idea, okay, just to get her attention. I've also used her name twice, and I offered an idea of value. So see, this will get Wendy to say yes. It will also get her to say yes, but spark her interest, get excited about having this conversation with you. So how will you make a connection? I'd like you to think about somebody on this, a senior leader, a senior manager, CEO that you'd like to meet with. How will you make a connection? All right, so we've made a connection. Now we want to understand. Again, this is a condensed version of some of the things we've covered before. Always good to refresh, especially when talking to senior leaders. The key to connecting is to ask and listen. The goal is to certainly gather information to see if your idea is relevant in the first place, but as or more important is to make the other person feel understood. They want to know that we get them, that we understand their issues, the struggles they're under, their goals and aspirations. When they do that, they're much more receptive to what you have to say. Now, before we jump into asking questions, so we've made a connection, we want to learn more, we want to insert a sentence or two that sets up the next few minutes. Essentially, we want to connect and then say, I'd like to ask a few questions. Is that okay? I call that a conversational header. It might go something like this. Thank you for meeting with you. Thank you for meeting with me. I'd love to learn more about you and your priorities so that any recommendations I make are aligned with your goals. Okay if I ask you a few questions. Now, some senior leaders might go, ooh, you know what? I don't have time to explain everything to you. So while the principle is good here, with a senior leader, you might want to narrow it down, make it a little more specific. I'm really concerned, something like, thanks for meeting with you. I know one of your goals this year is to increase revenues by 8 million. I'd like to talk to you about an idea that could save 5 on the bottom line. I'd love to explain that to you, but first I'd like to ask a couple questions to make sure I'm in alignment. Is that okay? So now, you see the difference? We went from showing them, hey, I don't know anything, to I know you and I've got a couple questions before I give you the idea. They'll be a lot more receptive to that. And when you're asking questions, we want to start strategic and then get tactical. So one of the mistakes we make, especially with senior leaders, is we got tactical too soon. We're into those questions we call closed-ended questions that have 1 or 2 word answers. How soon, how many, which one do you prefer? A more strategic question in this scenario might be, tell me about how are you feeling? How are we progressing toward our corporate objective of increasing revenues of $8 million? What are the obstacles in their way? See the difference? It just positions you as a strategic advisor. Again, start open-ended to the closed ones. Open-ended questions elicit longer answers. What's important to you about this? Tell me about that. Share with me that. Now, even with the folks like Simon Cowell, Hillary Clinton, who don't have a lot of time, just 1 or 2 quick questions are okay. But you want to, again, flex your style depending on the person you're talking to. Again, your ultimate goal is to understand. I'm going to show you a couple more examples of types of questions. Again, these are open-ended strategic questions. Here's an example of powerful questions. They encourage deep thinking and make you look good. The greatest challenges for a lot of our clients or our competitors is this: how has this been impacting you? For example, a lot of our peer companies are struggling with supply chain issues. How, from your perspective, has that been impacting us? Okay, value questions. These help quantify the issue. Show them that this issue that you're discussing is super important. How is this impacting our business? What's the potential downside if we don't address this? You're also eliciting some emotion, which is good because emotion is part of every decision, as much as we like to think we're making every decision with just logic. And then a payoff question. So this is getting them to think about, well, if we resolve this, what is the future going to look like? Get them thinking about a brighter tomorrow. Imagine it's a year from now and this issue has been resolved. What does life look like from that perspective? Again, giving you some more ideas. These questions will all be in the handout that Scott is emailing to you. All right, finally, present. here are some ideas, cold, especially for senior leader conversations. Number one, give them bluff, not fake, that's another word, but the acrostic BLUF, bottom, or I guess it's an acronym, bottom line up front. I'd like to talk to you today about a way to save $5 million. It's got low risk, low cost. Are you interested? So you've given them the bottom line up front. Some leaders might say, sounds good, I trust you, go take care of it. Another way to structure, okay, that's one tool. Another tool is to use this three-part process. When it's time to present, it is whatever it is, you're talking about getting a raise, implementing a new solution, describe the problem, describe the solution, and then describe the value. Problem, solution, value. And here's an example. So when I was at Gartner and I was running sales training, I started recording our technical experts, people like you, on audio, cassette tape, way back in the day. Anybody young enough or old enough to remember what a cassette tape is? Right, it's, there we go, I got one right here. There we go, right? Remember those? Get that rattle, I got the tape going through. Anyway, I interviewed them on tape to help them simplify their language so that the salespeople would later hear their content in very simple, easy to digest terms, which is exactly what we want to do when talking to senior executives. Keep it simple. Don't make it too complicated. So one day I was taking a writing class down in New York City, and somebody next to me handed me this cassette program. It was a screenwriting class. This person had written the movie, not this person, but the person interviewed on these cassettes had written the movie Sleepless in Seattle. And I thought, wait a minute, we could take the cassettes I'm doing with our Gartner people, and they're giving them to our sales force. We could sell these to our clients. I want to turn this into a product. So I went to Manny Fernandez, our CEO. I had to connect. So I said, I'd like to share a new product idea, an executive summary delivered on audio. He said, great, come on in. You got 20 minutes. And then I said something to show him I understood. I know you're busy, so I'll be brief. Then I went into that problem, solution, value format. And this is all talking, but I did have this visual. I said, look, our CIO clients are suffering from information overload. They're constantly on the go. They're not reading the research that we send them. How about if we create an audio news magazine? And the visual aid, I showed him this. Can you imagine a year from now if we've got this and it says talking technology, and that our CIOs can listen to this, get an executive summary of the best Gartner research, and we can sell this for $500 a year? Boom. And that will contribute to your goal of growing revenues 5 million. It'll set us apart from the competition, and it will improve our renewal rate. Get it? Problem, solution, value, and visual aid, something to show them. And he said, tell you what, go talk to Michael, who is the new product guy. Why don't you see what he has to say? So again, now notice about Maddie, that's his name. He liked the idea. I took up 7 minutes. He said, go talk to Michael. So I said to Michael, Manny asked me to talk to you. Okay, so now Michael's got to meet with me. And so I went through the whole thing with Michael. He said, Roger, put together a business plan, and it should be 1 page. Well, it took me a year, but finally they approved the product, and it was a big success. All right, so I hope that was helpful. We've covered some of the basics, the importance of connecting with people first, understanding, presenting, the importance of elevating your language, the need to have executive presence, and always flex your style so that you're speaking their style, but also using their words. their language, and appealing to the issues that are important to them. You get a leader talking about what's important to them. You show that you're not just some person way down with a screwdriver, but you can speak about issues that they're facing. You go a long way. Anyway, I hope that was helpful. We've got a few minutes for questions and answers. Happy to take those. And if you think of a question later, there's my email address at the bottom. Feel free to send me an email. Again, that book is just hot off the press. It's got a lot of the concepts written out in detail if that's helpful to you.
Awesome. Great presentation, Roger. I know I picked up a few things or this reinforce some things I already do. So it's always great having you provide these tips and tricks of the trade. One question I have is, let's say you're meeting with a senior manager and you sort of, quote, do your homework, but it's not going the way you anticipated. You misjudged their personality. You went detailed where they want another option. What's a good way to sort of try to pivot in the moment?
Yeah, great question. It's happens to all of us. I think two things. Number one is set it up front at the beginning so that the pressure is off both of you. Let's say you do have an idea and you think it would match and help them achieve their objective. Let's just go in with that premise. Don't go in assuming and demanding that your solution is going to get approved. So something at the beginning by saying, my team has come up with an idea that might help us address this particular issue. I love to present it to you. Now, here's the language. I don't know if it's going to be a match for you or not. I couldn't sleep at night if I didn't go. No, I'm sorry. Let's do that again. My team came up with an idea that might help address our objective of doing ABC. Here's the language. I don't know if it's going to be a good match or not. I do think it's worth exploring. Is it okay if I ask you a couple of quick questions first, and then I'll run the idea by you? If it seems like a good match, great. If not, no harm, no foul. So that takes the pressure off. And if you're in the middle of it and things have not gone well, you've already said, hey, I don't know if this is going to be a match or not. So that saves an awkward moment for both you and the senior leader. Now, the other thing you can do throughout the conversation, a couple things. One is to keep your eye on the other person. You know if somebody's getting it or not. You've got to look them in the eye. You've got to study their expressions and see if they're still resonating, if they're still getting it. Are they showing any interest at all? And then the other thing you can do in the sales world, it's called a trial close. All you're doing is asking a question to see if this is making sense or resonating or not. So you could say, let's say after 5 minutes, you've met the person for the first time. You don't know if their expression means they're interested or they're bored. So interject a question, something like this. Hey, we've talked for about 5 minutes now. I just wanted to see if this is resonating at all. Have I made sense? Is this too many details? Is this connecting at all? Something like that. Just another way of saying it is taking their temperature, testing for engagement. And there's certainly many ways to word that. In my workshops, I say, is this making sense? Do we need a break? So again, that question to again, trial close to see if they're getting it, are they engaged? Hopefully that's helpful.
No, I think that's really helpful. This is probably more of a comment, but I think you can just add to this, or it's just sort of a question and a comment, I think. Often we don't, this is from Robin, often we don't have a solution yet because we don't know enough about their situation. So a lot of times we're trying to just get the opportunity to investigate.
Absolutely, right. So this was a condensed version of, I think, one or two of the other ones we've done earlier. Yes, so this goes back to what I said earlier. So we've got these 3 steps: connect, understand, present. So the connect in this case is, hey boss, I'd like to make sure I'm helping you achieve X goal. Can we meet for 30 minutes? I'd like to ask some questions so that my team and I can later brainstorm some solutions that we can present to you later. Sounds great, Susan, come on in. So you have the meeting, and it's understood that all we're going to do in this meeting is have a conversation, help me understand the challenges, gather information, and then at the end of the meeting, that, again, we haven't moved to present yet, we're just understanding, and you're going to say something like that. Hey, Susan, thank you so much for meeting with me and talking about the challenges. What I'm taking away is this, and you're going to summarize. You've been taking notes, maybe you've typed, maybe you've written. It sounds like the top 3 challenges are A, B, C. And one of the ideas that you'd like my team to kick around is, what if we were to put this out for bid? What competitors are out there that might drive down the overall cost? And then hopefully Susan will say, that is exactly right. Thank you. So that summary at the end of the meeting is important, because Susan might say, no, you didn't get it. No, you weren't listening. Those weren't the reasons at all. There was one main issue, and that is A. And what I want you to do is B. And so then you summarize again. Thank you for clarifying. What I'm hearing is the number 1 issue is A, and you would like me to go out and do B. Exactly. Now you've got it. Great. It's going to take me 2 weeks to go out and do some homework on this. Let's get out our calendar and set something up 2 weeks from today for an hour. Is that okay? Great. So you see that you're not going to do all 3 things necessarily in that one meeting. And even in that meeting, you might go from connect to understand. And then even in that first meeting, you might pitch some ideas that you've been thinking about. Well, let's just brainstorm here for a quick second. A couple of ideas that have come up are A and B. What are your thoughts on that? Too soon to tell. I'd prefer that you go out and research it more fully. Great, I'll go out and do that. Again, hopefully that answered that question.
Yeah, no, I think it does. And that looks like the last of the questions. So I think with that, we'll just wrap up. Again, Roger, thank you for being here today and sharing your really great and valuable insight on this important topic. I think this really resonated with all the attendees here today. Quick programming note, between our 3 webinar series, this one, the Build Your Career webinar, and our 2 technical webinar programs, the Distinguished Lecturer series and the Standards Activities Board series. This was the last webinar of the year for 2022. Our first webinar in 2023 will be from our Distinguished Lecturer series titled Automatic Image Clustering with Multi-Level Quantum Systems. You'll receive a link tomorrow to register for that webinar, and you'll be able to watch any of our recent webinars on demand through that link as well. Be on the lookout for the full webinar schedule, which will hopefully will start to be announced at least through Q1 in the coming weeks. Again, thank you to Roger for sharing his great knowledge with us today, and thank you all for attending today and throughout the year to make all these webinars incredibly successful. Thank you again, and have a great rest of your day.